The Vorkal pit looked like a wound cut into the heart of the Galactic Academy. A perfect circle of black stone, rimmed with shimmering force fields, lit from below by a grid of dull red lights that made every shadow look sharper and more dangerous than it really was. At least that was what the instructors said. The danger was very real. The dramatics were just a bonus. The gallery above the pit buzzed with layered voices, clicks, hums, and whispered telepathic murmurs. Cadets of 100 species leaned against the transparent barrier, some with extra sets of arms folded, some coiling nervous tails, some obsessively checking their vitals on wristbands. Everyone was waiting for the last trial of the courage exam. Everyone was also very aware that the last trial had been saved for the human. Lena adjusted the collar of her academy jumpsuit and tried to ignore the way her name echoed around the arena. The human. Not her name. Not her rank, just her species, said with the same mix of fascination and suspicion she heard on almost every station she visited. Sometimes she minded. Today, she let it roll off. If the instructors wanted to turn her into a spectacle, she would at least give them one worth watching. On the far side of the arena, the heavy door to the preparation hallway slid open. Commander Rex stepped through, his four-jointed legs clacking on the metal, his insectoid carapace polished to a ceremonial dark shine. His mandibles clicked as he looked up at the gallery, then down at Lena. The command staff watched from a balcony above him, their uniforms a patchwork of colors and ranks, every eye and sensory organ fixed on the human at the center of the pit. "Cadet Lena Carter," Rex announced, his voice booming through the translation field. "Final candidate. Final trial." His compound eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you prepared to face the Vorkal?" Lena breathed in slowly, feeling the air of the arena, cool, faintly metallic, tinged with the smell of ozone from the force fields. Her heart rate ticked up, but not as much as it had that first week she arrived. Humanity's reputation had gotten her into the academy. Her stubbornness was what kept her here. She straightened her spine, squared her shoulders, and nodded. "I am, sir," she said. "Ready." Rex studied her in silence for a moment. Lena wondered if he remembered the first time they had spoken, when he told her that humans were either legends or disasters, and he was not sure which one she would become. If he did remember, he did not show it. His mandibles parted in what passed for a thin smile. "Very well. Trial parameters. You will enter the arena alone. You will not be permitted weapons, armor, or technological aids. The Vorkal will be released. You will be evaluated on composure, decision-making, and survivability." He paused, letting the words hang heavy in the air. "Retreat is not an option. Only completion or failure." Somewhere above, an anxious Cadrian cadet whispered, "Failure means we never see him again." Another cadet hushed him, but the words slipped through the audience like a cold breeze. The Vorkal pit had a reputation even among the bravest species. It was where courage stopped being a theory on a datapad and became something that either kept a body breathing or did not. Lena knew the statistics. 18% of candidates had been pulled from the trial unconscious, but alive. 12% had been too injured to continue their studies for the rest of the year. No one had died in the last decade, officially. Unofficially, no one talked about the early years of the academy much. "Understood," Lena answered. Her voice did not shake. She refused to let it. Rex tilted his head. "Do you have any questions before we begin?" She did, actually. She had a dozen questions. Why did a so-called enlightened galactic academy still measure courage by how long someone could last in a cage with a weaponized predator? Why was fear only respected when it was punched in the face? Why not an empathy exam? But she also understood that this trial meant something to these people. It was tradition, woven into their military culture, their stories and songs and myths. You could not rip that out in one day. Change started with one small crack. "Just one, sir," she said. "How long has this particular Vorkal been in use?" A ripple of surprise moved through the observers. No one ever asked about the creature. The predator was supposed to be an obstacle, not a subject. Rex's antennae twitched. 17 standard months. It has undergone routine conditioning and reinforcement between trials. Conditioning, Lena repeated quietly. She thought of words that never sat right with her. Compliant, lethal, reliable. And medical care? Now she had his full attention. His eyes flickered for a fraction of a second. It is maintained within acceptable health parameters, he said. This is not a veterinary exam, Cadet Carter. You are here to prove your courage. With all due respect, sir, Lena replied. My courage will show either way. But back on Earth, she had spent hours watching documentaries about predators, wolves, big cats, sharks, bears. She had read about how they moved, how they communicated, how they decided what was prey and what was not. Humanity had survived not by being the strongest, but by understanding the strong. The tunnel ended. A final door waited in front of her, glowing with a thin outline of blue. The floor beneath her boots vibrated as the arena systems synced her biosignature, confirming that the next sequence of the trial could begin. A disembodied voice, that strange, neutral tone of standardized translation, spoke above her. Cadet Lena Carter, final trial initiation in 10 seconds. She rolled her shoulders, loosening muscles that clenched without permission. The trick, she reminded herself, was not to be fearless. The trick was to stay curious even when fear crouched in the corner of the mind, growling. 5 seconds. She pictured the Vorkal as she had seen it on footage. 6 legs ending in hooked claws, each step silent on stone. A long body like a sleek panther fused with a reptile. A head plated with overlapping bone ridges, eyes designed to see in total darkness. The trainers called it a fear engine. Lena saw something else, an animal that had been taken from wherever it was born, dropped into a pit, and told that anything entering that space was an enemy. 3, 2, 1. The door slid open. Light flooded in, harsh after the dimness of the tunnel. Lena stepped out into the arena. The roar of the gallery hit her in a wave, howls, clicks, chants in languages the translators did not bother converting because they were pure emotion. She moved to the center of the pit, exactly where every candidate before her had stood. The stone was warm under her boots. The air was cooler here, moving in subtle currents as the environment systems shifted to trial mode. Across the pit, another door, larger, reinforced with thick bars and energy locks, sat embedded in the wall. That was where the Vorkal waited. That was where the real trial would begin. Lena kept her breathing even, counting each inhale and exhale. She did not raise her hands in a fighting stance. Instead, she relaxed them at her sides. She had no weapons to grip anyway. Her mind ran through the plan she had shaped over weeks, quietly, while others boasted about how they would show that beast who was in charge. The Vorkal was not the only thing being tested here. Kinetic barriers at full power, an instructor's voice announced. Environment locked. Release sequence in 3, 2, 1. The heavy door across from her shuddered. Locks disengaged with a series of loud metallic clanks, and the air trembled with the low growl of a creature that knew this sound meant only one thing: a fight. The door split and slid to the sides. The darkness inside seemed almost solid for a heartbeat, and then something moved within it, smooth and deliberate. 2 yellow eyes flicked open, catching the arena lights and reflecting them in feral slits. The Vorkal stepped out. The gallery went quiet. Even the telepaths dimmed their mental chatter, not eager to taste whatever went on in the predator's mind. It was larger than the footage could show. From here, 10 meters away, Lena could see the ripples of muscle under scaled hide, the tiny scars that crisscrossed its flank, the faint shimmer of implanted conditioning nodes along its spine. Its nostrils flared as it tasted the air, head swinging slowly until those eyes locked onto her standing in the open. Lena's heart lurched, a primal part of her brain screaming run. She shifted her weight slightly but did not move her feet. If she bolted now, she would just confirm the Academy's expectations. Human equals erratic, human equals danger, human equals either monster or meat. Instead, she did something no one in the gallery expected. She exhaled and lowered herself into a crouch. The movement was slow, deliberate. She did not break eye contact, but she dropped her gaze by a fraction, avoiding the hard, direct stare that predators sometimes saw as a challenge. Her hands opened with empty palms facing slightly outward, fingers relaxed, arms loose at her sides. From the balcony, an instructor hissed through the comms, "What is she doing? She is compromising her mobility." Another voice, more curious, replied, "Look at the Vorkal. He is not charging." The predator's front legs tensed, claws lightly scratching the stone, but he did not leap. His head tilted a little, as if the human's posture had startled him more than the usual screaming and lunging. His tail swished once, twice, a slow pendulum of calculation. Lena kept her attention on the creature's shoulders and chest, the way she had been taught in every animal behavior video. Do not focus too hard on the teeth. Do not get hypnotized by the eyes. Watch the weight, the balance, the small shifts that telegraph intent. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quiet enough that only the arena's audio filters carried it to the crowd. "Hey there," she said. "You did not choose this place, did you?" The words meant nothing to the Vorkal, but the tone did. Soft, low, not shrill or aggressive. A keening roar might get a crowd cheering. This was not for the crowd. High above, Commander Rex folded two of his arms while the others gripped the railing. His mandibles clicked softly. The human was not taking a stance. The human was not circling or feinting. The human was talking. He could almost hear the collective confusion of the cadets around him. In the pit, the Vorkal sniffed again. The predator took one step forward, then another, the muscles along his forelegs taut, but not yet explosive. The distance between them shrank. 8 meters, 7, 6. Lena's heartbeat thrummed loud enough that she could feel it in her throat, but she did not break position. Every instinct begged her to stand, to prepare to dodge, to do something. Instead, she remembered a street dog back home that had been all ribs and fear, ready to bite the first hand that reached too fast. "Easy," she murmured, not moving her lips too much, keeping her body language as smooth as she could. "I see you. I am not here to hurt you." Courage, she thought, was not about pretending the Vorkal could not rip her apart before the barriers could even fire a stun pulse. Courage was choosing to act according to her values, even when her veins ran with ice. The predator stopped at 4 meters. His head lowered, nostrils flaring wider as he sniffed deeply, sampling her scent. Sweat, fear, the faint sterile smell of the Academy's laundry systems, the lingering traces of whatever antiseptic the medbay used. Human, his instincts said. New scent. Unknown. He growled, a deep rumble that vibrated in Lena's bones. But there was a note in it. Uncertainty, maybe. Confusion. As if he had expected something else. A charge, a scream, a fight. The gallery watched, 1,000 eyes fixed on a small human crouched on bare stone, facing a weaponized nightmare. The test designers leaned forward in their seats, wondering if they were about to record the shortest trial in Academy history. Lena did not know that. She only knew that she had reached the first critical moment. The Vorkal had not yet decided whether she was prey, rival, or something else entirely. And in that breathless space between decision and action, she realized something that made her mouth go dry. He was just as trapped in this trial as she was. The Vorkal exhaled a slow, hot breath that rippled the dust on the arena floor, and Lena felt the faint warmth brush her skin. The creature's stare locked onto her with a sharp, unsettling intelligence, as if he were trying to classify her but had not yet chosen a category. She remained in her low crouch, resisting every instinct that urged her to shift position. Any sudden movement might force the predator's decision in the worst possible direction. The arena fell strangely quiet as the next seconds stretched longer than they should have. Lena sensed hundreds of eyes watching, waiting for the moment the beast decided to make his move. But the Vorkal did not lunge. Instead, he tilted his head, the bone ridges along his snout catching the arena lights in a way that made him look almost curious. His tail flicked twice, a faint lash of agitation or confusion. Lena could not be sure. Her heart hammered, but she kept her breath even, matching each inhale and exhale to the rhythm she had used countless times during high-stress drills. The predator stepped closer, leaving deep, deliberate impressions in the stone dust. 3 meters now. Lena could see the texture of his scales, the pattern of healed cuts, the faint discoloration near one shoulder that suggested some older wound. The sight stirred a flicker of anger in her chest. The Academy called this creature a tool, but tools did not bleed. She wondered what kind of conditioning had left those marks. She wondered how many cadets had entered this pit believing they were the only ones being tested. Then the Vorkal lowered his head, nostrils nearly brushing the ground as he continued to sample her scent. A low chuff vibrated in his throat, not quite a growl, but not calm either. Lena resisted the urge to retreat. Even a half step would announce vulnerability. She stayed grounded, steady, letting her breath form a quiet, rhythmic sound that might signal she was not aggressive. A sudden metallic click echoed from the observation balcony. It was soft, insignificant to most ears, but the Vorkal reacted instantly. His head snapped toward the sound, muscles tightening like coiled springs. His claws scraped the stone as he pivoted, prepared for threat or command. For a terrifying moment, Lena thought he might decide she was the easier target in a moment of confusion. She made her choice quickly. "Easy," she whispered again, softer this time. She shifted her weight a fraction, not backward but sideways, just enough to redirect attention without provoking him. Her voice, calm but firm, barely carried beyond the pit, but the predator's ears twitched, catching the sound. The Vorkal swung his gaze back to her, his expression unreadable but intense. His tail lowered slightly, not relaxed, but less rigid. That was something. Lena did not allow herself relief, but she noted the change carefully, the way a scientist might observe a new behavioral response. She lifted her hand just a few centimeters, slow enough that each moment felt like a test within a test. She kept her palm open, fingers loose, showing she held nothing that could be seen as a threat. The Vorkal's eyes narrowed, following the movement with unsettling precision. He did not retreat, nor did he strike. Instead, he leaned forward again, inching closer until Lena could see her reflection in his glossy pupils. Then he growled, but the sound was no longer the raw, violent challenge she had expected. It was lower, almost questioning. Lena pressed her voice into a steady, controlled tone. "You do not want to fight, do you?" she murmured. She knew he could not understand her words, but tone mattered. Rhythm mattered. Animals on Earth reacted more to cadence and posture than vocabulary. Perhaps this predator was not so different. Her raised hand trembled slightly, but she forced the shaking to stop. She held the position, letting the Vorkal decide the next moment. He sniffed at the air near her fingers, hesitated, then slowly extended his neck until his armor-plated snout hovered 1/2 meter away. She could feel the warmth of his breath, heavy with the scent of meat, metal, and something distinctly wild. Just when she thought he might accept her presence, the arena lighting shifted subtly as the force fields adjusted their energy output. The flicker of shadows across the stone caught the predator's attention. His ears twitched sharply. He jerked his head up, his entire body snapping into alert mode. Lena's pulse spiked as she recognized the decisive shift in behavior. The Vorkal had been pushed into uncertainty again, and uncertainty in a predator was often the moment just before violence. Before fear could drive her into a mistake, she slowly sank further into her crouch, lowering herself enough that her center of gravity dropped into a safer position. She avoided eye contact for a breath, then looked back at him with deliberate softness. In predator psychology, smaller and calmer could sometimes interrupt the instinctual attack response. "You are okay?" she whispered, letting the words fall in a gentle rhythm. "You are okay. Stay with me." Her voice echoed faintly across the pit, the translation fields dampening the edges of her tone, but the emotion still carried. The Vorkal made a low, clicking noise in the back of his throat. His shoulders loosened a fraction. The lethal tension that had surged through him began to ease, breath by breath. Then something remarkable happened. He walked directly toward her. Not a lunge, not a charge, a measured, almost cautious approach. He stopped less than a meter away, towering over her small, crouched figure. His head lowered until his snout nearly touched her knee, as if he were verifying something only he could detect. His breath rolled over her again, heavy and warm. Lena felt her breath catch. She had not expected him to approach this closely, not this soon. She forced herself to remain still, even though her instincts screamed that a creature this large, this dangerous, had no business being so close to her unprotected body. She reminded herself that the slightest flinch might undo everything she had built so far. The Vorkal nudged her knee, not hard, but firm enough to test her stability. Lena did not pull away. The predator huffed softly, then nudged her again, this time higher on her thigh. She recognized the behavior from Earth animals, testing, mapping, identifying. He was trying to understand who she was by how she reacted. Above them, the gallery erupted in stunned murmurs. Lena did not look up, but she felt the shift in the air. 1,000 observers trying to decipher what they were witnessing. None of them had ever seen a Vorkal initiate physical contact without violence. She decided it was time to take the smallest possible risk. Very slowly, she extended her hand toward the creature's jawline. Not to touch, just to offer. The gesture was one she had seen her mother use when meeting skittish animals. An invitation, not an imposition. Her fingers hovered inches from the predator's scales. The Vorkal froze. Every muscle locked, his breath stopping for a beat as he evaluated the motion. Lena kept her arm absolutely steady. Her hand did not shake this time. She waited, letting him choose. The predator leaned forward and pressed his snout against her palm. A collective gasp echoed through the arena. Lena's chest tightened with relief and disbelief all at once. The creature's scales were warm, smoother than she expected, with faint ridges where bone plates overlapped. His breath puffed against her wrist as he sniffed, tasting her scent more directly. His eyes half closed, not in aggression, but in something that felt almost like comfort or recognition. She let herself exhale softly, barely moving her ribs. She shifted her fingers enough to trace the edge of one ridge, gentle as a whisper. The Vorkal's tail flicked once, slower this time, and he leaned into her touch in a way that could only be described as a fragile, tentative acceptance. The instructors had expected her to display courage. The cadets had expected a fight. The academy had expected spectacle. Instead, she had begun something dangerously close to trust. Lena lowered her hand after a moment, not wanting to push the fragile connection too quickly. The Vorkal followed the movement with slow, deliberate focus, then sat back on his haunches. He had not attacked. He had not fled. He had chosen to remain. The trial, built to test fear, had shifted into something entirely different. Lena knew the next steps would matter more than anything she had done so far, and she sensed, with a certainty that tightened her throat, that the Vorkal was waiting for her to decide what happened next. The Vorkal remained seated in front of Lena, his towering form casting a shifting shadow across the arena floor as the overhead lights adjusted to a new cycle. His chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm, nothing like the explosive panting she had seen in footage of previous trials. He watched her with a strangely focused calm, as if her presence demanded his full attention. Lena felt her pulse thrum in her ears, but she kept her breath even. Calm was a fragile thread, and she was not about to snap it. A faint vibration spread through the ground beneath her boots as the arena systems transitioned to the next programmed phase of the trial. She recognized the subtle tremor from her training briefings: environment escalation. Usually, that meant the instructors raised the stakes to push the cadets' limits. She did not know what specific challenge would appear, but she sensed the Vorkal felt it too. The Predator's ears twitched, and his gaze drifted upward, toward the source of the mechanical hum reverberating from the walls. Lena shifted her weight slightly, enough to draw his attention back before tension turned into something dangerous. His eyes refocused on her instantly. The fast reactions that would normally terrify any sane person brought her something close to cautious hope. He was choosing to center himself on her presence. That meant he was not slipping into panic or aggression. "Stay with me," she murmured, keeping her voice steady. She did not reach out this time. She wanted to avoid overwhelming him. Instead, she leaned back a little, opening the space between them by a fraction. The Vorkal huffed softly, then rose from his seated posture in one fluid motion. His height increased dramatically when he stood, his spine rippling with controlled power. He took a step closer, shortening the gap she had created, reaffirming that he wanted proximity. A series of sharp metallic clangs rang from the eastern wall as panels slid open, revealing a cluster of mobile drones shaped like segmented spheres. Each drone carried flashing blue sensors and a set of thin mechanical limbs that unfolded like sharp metallic petals. Lena stiffened. She had seen these drones demonstrated during orientation. They emitted sonic pulses to provoke the Vorkal, simulating the presence of multiple threats. The purpose was simple: force the creature to attack, force the cadet to survive. The drones whirred to life, their lights strobing as they took to the air. The Vorkal's eyes snapped toward them instantly. His muscles tensed, shoulders drawn back as instinct surged. His tail lashed once, slapping the stone with an audible crack. Lena recognized the signs: alertness tipping dangerously close to aggression. She knew how easily this could unravel. One misstep from the drones, one surge of fear or confusion from the creature, and the situation would dissolve into chaos. She acted quickly. Slowly, she rose to her feet. The movement was fluid, controlled, never jerky. Her gaze stayed on the Vorkal, letting him register that she was not abandoning the connection they had formed. His eyes followed her intently, but he did not lunge. His claws kneaded the floor once, a restless gesture she interpreted as suppressed instinct. The first drone emitted a sharp, high-pitched pulse. The sound bounced around the pit, vibrating in Lena's ribs. The Vorkal reacted instantly, crouching low with a snarl that reverberated through the arena. His gaze locked on the nearest drone, body coiling like a living spring. Lena felt her breath seize. If he attacked the drone, the system would escalate again, and the situation could spiral out of her control. "Hey," she called softly, keeping her voice level but firm. She stepped sideways, deliberately placing herself between him and the nearest drone, not blocking him, but redirecting his focus. His eyes flicked to her, widening slightly, as if shocked that she would position herself so vulnerably. She held steady. "I am here. Focus on me." The Vorkal's ears twitched. His breathing shifted, deepening and slowing, the subtle heave of an animal trying to manage instinct. His head angled toward her, drawn to her tone. For a moment she believed it might work, until the drone released another pulse, louder than the first. The Predator flinched, snarling at the intrusive noise, his tail whipping hard enough to send dust swirling. He advanced a step toward the airborne machines, predatory intent sharpening in his posture. Lena reacted before fear had a chance to root her in place. She extended her hand toward him again, but this time she added a soft click of her tongue, imitating the small sound her mother used to calm anxious puppies. She had no idea if it would mean anything to a Vorkal, but she needed something to cut through the rising tension. Surprisingly, the creature's head snapped toward her instantly, as if the unfamiliar sound had snagged his attention more effectively than the drone's noise. "Good," she breathed, her hand steady. "Look at me. You are all right." The drones shifted into a new formation, surrounding the pair in a loose circle. Their sensors buzzed, calculating trajectories. The Vorkal turned hesitantly, torn between instinct and the human who kept refusing to behave like prey or opponent. His tail swayed in uncertain arcs. Lena sensed the tipping point approaching. Before the drones could activate their next sequence, she stepped closer to him. Her boots scraped lightly against the stone, and she made sure the sound was soft, predictable, not startling. The Vorkal's head dipped toward her, and his breath gusted across her face. She could feel the tension vibrating through him like a taut wire. "It is okay," she whispered. "You do not have to attack." She raised her other hand, offering it with the same slow, controlled motion she had used earlier. The Vorkal leaned forward, inhaled deeply, and pressed the side of his head against her palm. Relief hit her like a warm wave, but she did not sink into it. She kept her posture firm, grounding herself in the moment. Then the drones advanced. Lena acted on instinct of her own, stepping fully beside the predator and placing one hand near his jaw, steadying him as she shifted her weight. The movement startled him slightly, but he did not recoil. Instead, he pressed closer, angling his body to shield her from the nearest drone, as if the role had reversed entirely. The protective shift in his stance was so abrupt, so unplanned, that Lena almost forgot to breathe. The drone emitted another pulse. This time, the Vorkal did not lunge. He did not snarl. He planted his feet and angled his body directly between Lena and the machine, issuing a low rumble that vibrated through his chest and into her fingertips. It was not an attack. It was a warning, directed at the drones rather than her. The change was subtle, but monumental. The gallery reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, even a few shouts echoed above the pit. Lena could imagine what the instructors were thinking. The predator was demonstrating protective behavior, something no conditioning program had ever produced, something no cadet had ever inspired. She tightened her fingers slightly against the warm ridge of his jawline. "You are doing great," she whispered, careful to keep her voice low and unwavering. "Stay with me." The drones recalculated in response to the unexpected presence of a stable pair rather than a chaotic confrontation. Their lights flickered as the program attempted to adjust the scenario. The Vorkal huffed, a low, throaty sound that felt almost like irritation. He shifted closer again, his shoulder brushing Lena's. She steadied herself, ignoring the shock of how natural the contact felt despite the overwhelming size difference. For a long, tense moment, nothing moved. The drones hovered in a semicircle, waiting for a trigger. The Vorkal stood poised but controlled, and Lena breathed with deliberate rhythm, anchoring both herself and the creature beside her. Then, one by one, the drones powered down. Their lights dimmed, and their limbs retracted. The arena hummed as the systems registered that escalation had failed to provoke combat. The machines drifted backward toward the walls and disappeared into their ports with soft metallic clicks. Silence filled the pit again. The Vorkal exhaled sharply, then turned his head toward Lena, nudging her shoulder with surprising gentleness. She reached up and placed her hand carefully along the side of his neck. He leaned into the touch with a slow, deliberate motion, accepting the gesture without tension. She realized then that trust had taken root. Not flimsy, accidental trust, but something deeper. Fragile, yes, but real. The gallery did not dare speak. Even the usually boisterous cadets held their breath, watching a connection form where none had ever existed. Lena felt the weight of that silence, the enormity of what had begun, and knew the trial had shifted into uncharted territory. She was no longer surviving. She was building a bond. And the Vorkal, conditioned, feared, weaponized, was choosing to stand with her. The Vorkal's heavy breath warmed the side of Lena's neck as he stood pressed against her, his posture unmistakably protective. The gallery above remained frozen in stunned silence, unable to reconcile what they were seeing with decades of Academy precedent. Lena did not look up at them. She kept her focus on the creature beside her, sensing that the fragile balance she and he had formed could tip if she allowed even a moment of distraction. A soft vibration rippled through the floor, followed by a subtle shift in the arena's lighting. Lena recognized the signal. Another phase had begun. She braced herself, not moving, not tightening her muscles in a way that might startle the predator. The Vorkal's head lifted sharply, ears angling toward the upper walls. His tail straightened, tense but not snapping, as if he sensed the change even before the machinery activated. "You are all right?" Lena murmured, her voice barely audible beyond the pit. Her fingertips brushed the warm scales along his neck. The Vorkal leaned subtly into the contact, grounding himself in her presence. The motion steadied her as much as it steadied him. A deep hum grew around the arena, and the force fields shimmered with new intensity. The temperature in the pit shifted abruptly, first dipping into a biting cold, then rising into dry heat. It was designed to disorient, overload the senses, and force the predator into instinctive behavior. The Vorkal's breath came out in quick bursts as the air thinned momentarily, the environment system testing resilience. Lena stepped closer, keeping herself within the reach of his senses. "I know," she whispered. "Stay with me. I am here." The cold hit first. Frost began forming along the edge of the stone, creeping toward the center in ghostly tendrils. The Vorkal snarled low, hunching instinctively as the chill struck his joints. His scales contracted, shifting in ways that indicated discomfort. Lena knew this could escalate quickly if she failed to anchor him. She pressed the flat of her palm more firmly against his neck. He inhaled sharply, then exhaled in a slow, shuddering gust that clouded the air. His breath warmed her cheek. His focus returned to her. The temperature swung again, this time rising faster than before. Lena felt sweat bead along her hairline. Heat radiated from the floor, but the Vorkal adjusted far more smoothly than she expected. The creature lifted his head, scanning the arena with cautious wariness, but not panic. His ears twitched with irritation rather than fear. Lena felt a flicker of pride. She had not forced him to remain calm. She had helped him choose it. The environment shift settled into a neutral warmth, a deceptive calm that signaled the next escalation. The arena lighting dimmed until the pit was swallowed in an artificial twilight. Shadows stretched across the floor, long and irregular. Then the lights went out completely. Total darkness. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Lena did not move. She listened. She heard the low rumble of the Vorkal, not in aggression, but in alertness. She could not see him, but she could feel the faint vibration of his breath. Her heart hammered, but she steadied herself with a slow inhale. A faint glow pulsed from above as dozens of hovering orbs descended silently. They were each the size of a fist, illuminated with shifting patterns of blue and violet that crawled across their surfaces like lightning trapped inside glass. The orbs circled the pit in irregular spirals. Their movement was unpredictable, darting, weaving, accelerating, then halting abruptly. The Vorkal growled, his claws scraping the stone as he lowered his body. The lights agitated him more than the temperature shifts had. Lena understood why. The orbs moved like prey, but glowed like something dangerous. The conflicting cues could destabilize any creature's instincts, especially one conditioned to equate unpredictability with threat. "Easy," she whispered into the dark. "I am with you." A warm brush of air told her he was still at her side. She reached out slowly, searching until her hand found the ridge of his neck. The Vorkal shifted closer at her touch, leaning the full weight of his head against her palm. The contact grounded him again. His growl softened but did not vanish. One of the glowing orbs zipped directly over Lena's shoulder, close enough that the heat of its light pricked her skin. The Vorkal reacted instantly. He snapped his jaws toward the orb, not to attack, but to warn. The sound reverberated through the pit. The orb backed away with a rapid flash of white, signaling the system had registered his defensive reaction. The others shifted, adjusting their pattern. Lena realized the arena's programming was recalibrating in real time, trying to push the trial into unpredictability again. The Vorkal pressed himself against her, guiding her with his body. Lena let him move her, recognizing that he was positioning her within the safest pocket he could sense. She allowed the shift, trusting his instincts more than the arena's intentions. Another orb dived toward them, this one silent until the last second, when it emitted a sudden flare. Lena flinched, but the Vorkal reared upward, raising one of his massive forelegs to block the burst of light. The orb crashed harmlessly against his armored shoulder and bounced away. He did not snap at it. He did not attempt to destroy it. He shielded her. Lena's breath caught. "Good," she whispered. "You are doing so well." The orbs retreated temporarily, circling higher as if reassessing the dynamic. The darkness thinned as the arena lighting rose to a muted glow, revealing the Vorkal fully again. Lena saw the tension carved into his muscles, the careful focus in his eyes. He looked at her, not at the orbs. She stepped closer until she could rest her hand against his chest, where the scales softened. His breathing slowed in response, the tremors easing from his posture. He placed one clawed foot slightly in front of her, a small but unmistakable claim of responsibility. A loud metallic shift echoed from above. A new panel opened in the far wall, releasing a deeper vibration, one that resonated like distant thunder. Lena recognized the sound with an immediate spike of dread. This was not drones, not lights, not environmental shifts. This was the final pressure stimulus, an unprogrammed hazard designed to force confrontation if all other attempts failed. From the panel, a metal construct stepped into the pit. It resembled a quadrupedal frame, reinforced with plating and programmed to simulate a territorial challenge. It was not alive, but its size, its movements, and its aggressive signals were meant to trigger the Vorkal's most primal instincts. The creature beside her stiffened violently. His tail snapped into a rigid line, and a deep growl rumbled through his entire body. Lena pressed her palm harder against his chest. His head jerked toward her, eyes wide, pupils thin slits of distress. "You do not have to fight," she whispered fiercely. "You choose what happens, not the arena." The mechanical beast pounded its metal claws against the floor, producing a ringing echo. It advanced, lights glowing red in an unmistakable challenge. The Vorkal inhaled sharply and stepped in front of Lena, placing his entire body between her and the incoming threat. He lowered his stance, ready to defend, but he did not attack. Lena sensed the strain within him, the battle between instinct and trust. His breath came in bursts, but he held his ground. He growled a warning at the construct, a deep rolling sound that vibrated through the floor. The mechanical beast halted. The arena's sensors flickered, registering the unexpected behavior. For the first time since the trial began, the system did not know how to respond. The construct retreated. The Vorkal's growl faded into heavy breathing. His body relaxed, first the shoulders, then the legs, then the tail that finally lowered to rest on the stone. Lena pressed her forehead gently against the side of his neck. "You did it," she whispered. "You chose restraint." The gallery erupted, not in cheers, not in gasps, but in a stunned, disbelieving mix of sounds that barely qualified as speech. The entire academy had expected spectacle, survival, or failure. No one had expected cooperation. The Vorkal lifted his head proudly, pressing his muzzle against Lena's shoulder. She smiled despite the tension still lingering in her muscles. He had not just accepted her presence, he had defended it. And for the first time since the trial began, Lena realized she was no longer guiding him alone. He was choosing to protect her too. The Vorkal's rumbling breath slowly steadied as the mechanical construct disappeared behind the closing metal panel. Lena kept her hand against his chest until the last tremor faded from his muscles. The arena lights brightened in a slow gradient, dissolving the twilight shadows that clung to the pit. Warm illumination washed across the stone floor and revealed the predator standing tall beside her, no longer coiled with tension, no longer guided by instinct alone. He stood with purpose, alert, collected, resolute. Above them, silence still reigned. The gallery was packed with cadets, officers, and instructors, yet not a single voice rose to shatter the fragile moment carved into the air. Lena could almost feel the confusion rolling off the crowd. This trial was designed to push cadets into survival mode, to test terror and endurance. Instead, the audience had witnessed a partnership form under pressure, a connection strong enough to defy the arena's escalating threats. The arena's loudspeaker crackled, but no announcement followed. Even the system seemed frozen, as if the programming could not decide whether the test had ended or merely changed shape. After a long pause, the force fields flickered, then powered down with a soft electronic sigh. The sudden lack of that familiar hum made the pit feel strangely open, almost exposed. The Vorkal's ears twitched at the change, but he did not retreat. If anything, he lifted his head with a kind of guarded pride. Lena swallowed, feeling the weight of what came next. "It looks like the trial is over," she murmured. "We made it." The Vorkal turned his gaze toward her, eyes focused and bright. He did not understand her words, but he understood her tone. He nudged her shoulder gently with the top of his snout, a gesture that startled her with its tenderness. She reached up and touched his jawline, tracing the warm, textured scales. It felt like touching a living wall of strength that had decided, against all expectation, to trust her. A heavy door on the far end of the pit slid open. Commander Rex stepped forward, moving with measured caution. The instructors behind him followed at a distance, clearly unsure how close they could safely approach. Rex's mandibles twitched, betraying the shock he tried to conceal beneath his rigid posture. "Cadet Carter," he called, his voice echoing across the arena. "Remain exactly where you are. Do not make sudden movements." Lena almost laughed at the warning. The Vorkal had spent the entire trial proving that he responded more to her calmness than to any external stimulus. But she understood the commander's fear. To him, this was still a lethal predator standing inches from a cadet. Lena lifted one hand in a steadying gesture toward the approaching officers. "He is calm," she said, keeping her voice firm and even. "He will not attack. Please do not provoke him." Rex paused mid-step. His eyes narrowed, studying the creature's posture. The Vorkal watched the commander with mild curiosity, but showed no signs of aggression. He remained beside Lena, anchored to her like a shadow. "This is unprecedented," Rex said quietly. "The Vorkal has never reacted this way." "Maybe no one gave him the chance," Lena replied. Rex hesitated. His gaze flicked to the instructors behind him. Some looked astonished, others skeptical, and one or two displayed barely concealed frustration. A predator that refused to perform as expected disrupted decades of training doctrine. To them, the Vorkal was a tool. Lena saw the flicker of debate in their eyes. Dismantle the creature, recondition him, or classify him as a liability. Lena stepped protectively closer to the Vorkal before anyone could frame the creature as a malfunction. "He is not broken," she said. "He is aware. He is choosing, right now, not to harm anyone." Rex exhaled a long breath, mandibles twitching. "The Academy cannot keep a creature who rejects conditioning." Lena met his gaze squarely. "Then let me keep him." The gallery erupted. Murmurs, shouts, incredulous whispers rippled across the watchers like a shockwave. Rex stiffened, clearly unprepared for the request. "Cadet?" "He trusted me when every part of this trial was designed to terrify him." Lena kept her voice steady. He protected me from the hazards you deployed. He made choices that none of your conditioning predicted. You can call that a malfunction, or you can call that intelligence. But you cannot punish him for it." Rex's gaze shifted to the Vorkal again. The creature looked back without hostility, but with a strange, measured calm that was impossible to misinterpret. He was not an uncontrollable menace. He was watching, evaluating, understanding. The commander lifted one clawed hand and gestured for the gallery to quiet. Slowly, grudgingly, the noise died. "If we release this predator to your custody," he said, "you will be responsible for every consequence. If he attacks, if he breaks containment, if he harms anyone—" "He will not," Lena replied softly. "He has already chosen his path." Rex studied her for a long, silent moment. At last, he gave a single sharp nod. "Very well. The Vorkal is yours." The announcement sent another wave of incredulous whispers across the pit, but Lena barely heard them. Relief flooded her chest, warm and fierce. She turned toward the Vorkal, who lowered his massive head to her height. She placed her palm against his snout in acknowledgement. As the force fields at the gate deactivated fully, the Vorkal stepped forward beside her. The instructors tensed, but Lena moved with quiet confidence, guiding the creature up the ramp that led out of the pit. His heavy footsteps echoed behind her, steady and deliberate. Outside the arena, the sunlight spilled through the wide entry archway, illuminating the training grounds beyond. The Vorkal paused at the threshold, lifting his head to the open air. He inhaled deeply, tasting freedom in a way he had never experienced in captivity. His tail swayed, not with tension, but with cautious curiosity. Lena smiled. "Welcome to the Academy as a free partner," she whispered. Over the following days, everything changed. At first, officers followed her everywhere, expecting the Vorkal to turn violent at any moment. Instead, he became the calmest presence on the grounds. He walked beside Lena during patrol training, shadowing her movements with uncanny precision. He rested quietly near the dormitory courtyard, watching cadets with slow, assessing eyes that unnerved some but intrigued many. Eventually, instructors realized that his presence reduced theft, bullying, and late-night brawls by nearly 80%. No one wanted to cause trouble under the watchful gaze of a predator who had once been the Academy's ultimate fear test. Lena was soon approached by cadets who asked shyly if they could touch him. She introduced them carefully, teaching them how to approach him with respect. The Vorkal accepted the attention with dignified calm, though he still favored Lena above all others. He had chosen her, and she had chosen him. Weeks later, when the Academy held its annual ceremony, Rex invited her onto the central platform. The Vorkal walked beside her, towering and imposing yet serene. The entire arena watched as the commander spoke. "Courage," he said, "is not the absence of fear. It is the strength to act with compassion despite fear." He turned toward Lena. "Cadet Carter demonstrated courage beyond any definition we have used before, and she revealed something we had forgotten, that strength is not measured by domination, but by connection." The crowd erupted into applause as the Vorkal lowered his head beside her, standing proudly in the light. Lena rested her hand on the side of his neck. The scales were warm, familiar, steadying. She knew he would stay with her, not because he had been trained to obey, but because he had learned to trust. And in a place built on fear, trust was the most revolutionary victory of all. Their story became the Academy's new lesson, not one of survival against a monster, but of understanding between two beings who chose peace in a place designed for conflict. The Vorkal was no longer a test. He was her partner, her guardian, and together they rewrote the meaning of courage.